Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of the Two World Podcast. My name is Barney, and I'm joined today with my co-host. His name is
Jacob.
And today, too, we have the very special privilege of having another guest with us, and her name is...
Hi, I'm Katrina. Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah, it is really, it's really an honor. Katrina, I met her, I guess maybe almost 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We were both working at the same university, same medical school, and Katrina came to help teach English and also maybe work with some pharmacy courses was maybe kind of the original idea. And just from the times that Katrina has stopped in our office and talking with her through chatting and whatnot, and from Jacob's point of view, hearing her on another episode of a podcast that I was doing with Sean, I think, and you'll find out as well, that Katrina is really interesting and fascinating, and just
you're too
really
kind.
enjoyable
I'm
person
sure about that.
to be around.
So sure. No.
Very
Thank
true.
You, though. That's lovely.
Very true. And
I think the same of you too, though, to be fair.
You're very kind. Yeah. And so we hope to have her on, and we're very happy that she's on here today. So Katrina, as I mentioned, maybe working with the pharmacy program, she is a pharmacist herself. And before we talk about that, we have also learned some interesting things about her and her background. She spent the first part of her life in America, and even her parents come from very different backgrounds. And we know that eventually, maybe you can have noticed by her accent already that she lived in Australia. But the story of maybe how her parents got together, how she ended up in America, and how she got to Australia is one that actually I don't even know very well. So Katrina, could you get us started with that part of your story?
Yeah, indeed. So my parents, my mum is Australian. She was born and raised on the Gold Coast in Queensland, which is a really nice, calm, beachy area. And my dad is from northern Spain, a beautiful kind of village area called Asturias. And I believe that they met in London when my mother was working as a midwife. She's a nurse, by the way. She's actually a senior ICU nurse, but she used to be a midwife. And she was working in a hospital in London and staying in, just some flats in a particular area. And that's where my father was staying as well, as he was doing his master research, because he is actually a history professor, which is funny because I think I'm quite bad at history, as Barney knows from the other podcast, and Jacob, it seems now as well. So I'm so sorry, Father, that I didn't turn out the way you hoped. I'm joking. But so they hit it off, met in London, and they ended up moving to Spain, living in Asturias for a while. And then they made their way to New York City, to Manhattan. And that's where, I ended up being born in Manhattan in the 1990. And I spent around 11 years growing up in Manhattan in the 90s. And I had such fond memories, really, really fond memories. But then I just remember one day my mum coming home and sort of saying, pack your things, we're going to Australia. The biggest shock of my life. Yeah. My world turned upside down. I thought Australia was just this red desert and, a lack of shops, a lack of culture. But, we were moving and that was that. So, ended up moving to Australia after around 11 years of living in Manhattan. Obviously I studied my pharmacy degrees in Australia, not America. So I am registered only in Australia to practice pharmacy. And so Sorry, am I talking too much? Is this okay?
This is
Right,
perfect.
because I do have to explain a little bit about how I wound up in Japan, which is quite odd for a pharmacist, isn't it? So, I studied very hard for 3 years undergrad, 1.5 years master's plus internship. So I studied really hard for a long time. And after I completed my internship, which went for a year, and as I was waiting to get my registration approval, I decided to go to Japan on what was it, working holiday,
Hmm.
just to stay for like 6 months to a year maximum, because I love traveling and I've always wanted to go to Japan. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do that. And then I can come back and, kickstart my pharmacy career afterwards. But when I got to Japan, and I ended up staying obviously longer than I thought, because I did teach English at first, which is the easiest thing to do.
Hmm.
But I ended up getting that job at the medical university teaching. And I thought, oh my goodness, that is such a good opportunity. I'd be silly to go back so soon. So I decided to take that job, and that's where I met you, and got so much good experience teaching the medical students. So that's ultimately why I stayed in Japan longer than anticipated. Oh, and plus the old hubby back there. And I ended up meeting my Japanese husband as well. So can't forget that as well. So those two things, yeah, made me stay. But I realized that it is time to go back, because, my license I worked very hard for, and I can't let it
Hmm.
expire. I just can't do that. I just can't do that. And I miss pharmacy, and I want to specialize maybe in clinical pharmacy and do different things with that. So it just makes sense for me to go back to the West. Yeah.
As you were telling your story there, you mentioned that your mom serves as a nurse now. And
Yeah.
I wondered if she had an impact on your journey or your decision to go into pharmacy work.
For sure. I mean, I remember in New York, we went to a lot of museums, a lot of art galleries, but one particular museum, and I can't remember which one it was, but it had an amazing human body exhibition. And I remember being particularly moved by that. I remember a lot from that exhibition. And she'd have a medicine cabinet at home, filled with different medicines and bandages and needles, syringes, the whole shebang. And I remember being really interested in that as well. But more specifically, medicines and how they worked in the body.
Hmm.
So there we go. When I was like 8 years old, I had an interest in like tablets and things. So yeah, that's how it all got started, I suppose.
I remember one of the faculty developments, one of the mini FDs, kind of a little presentation that you gave about pharmacy, and I think also just like the medical system in Australia. And
Ah, yes, I remember the one now. Yeah.
yeah, I get the feeling that the pharmacist the pharmacist's role in Australia is actually pretty significant. Have you noticed a lot of a lot of differences between maybe what you remember in America and then here in Japan as compared with your role when you were working or when you would work in Australia?
That's a really good point. And funny you mentioned that. I think America is the best place to practice pharmacy. I think they have the most autonomy and the most, not to mention the highest salary, but I think they can do the most in America, and they have a lot of interesting specialties. And I don't know if you're aware, but they're actually doctors in America. The course is actually like a doctor of pharmacy, whereas in Commonwealth countries such as Australia, the UK, and Canada, it's just a minimum 4-year degree. However, yeah, like I think we can do a lot in Australia. I think maybe more so in America, and the least so in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think, Barney? I mean, I'm sure you've been to a few pharmacies in
Mm-hmm.
your time here. It's so different to Western pharmacies. I really don't think they have much of a clinical role or even talking much to the patient, much about their medications. I don't see much counseling going on. Counseling, about medication
Mm-hmm.
use. They might just explain a few very basic things, but it's often just written on the label or
Mm-hmm.
something that the doctor told you.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. And I doubt they do clinical services much, like a blood pressure testing or cardiac testing, blood glucose testing. It's different in Japan. It's really different, I
Yeah,
think.
I noticed thinking back to your presentation and then also what you just mentioned here, it seems like really the pharmacist in Australia, it
Yeah,
really has the chance to interact with the public a
so
lot.
much,
Yeah,
so much.
is that kind of one that drew you as well to being a pharmacist as opposed to like being a nurse or a different part of medicine?
Sorry, Barney, you cut out just a little bit there.
Oh
Can
no.
you repeat the last question?
Yeah.
Sorry, mate.
So,
Yeah.
is it kind of this interaction, kind of this daily interaction with the public and like a lot of wide variety of people? Is that kind of one aspect of pharmacy and being a pharmacist that drew you to that as opposed to a different part of medical care?
Oh, I see what you mean. Hmm. You know what? I'd have to say a little bit, maybe not so much. I think what drew me to pharmacy was really I loved chemistry, health, and science. And I think pharmacy is this beautiful blend of all three of those and more. You're almost like a nutritionist, a psychologist, a chemist, all in one. You wear many hats, I believe, which I think that really drew me in. But no, but at the same time, I do think it's the wide variety of people that you see kind of makes it interesting. Yeah. So I think it's a bit of that as well.
One thing that I find interesting in your story is, pardon me, how you were open to try something new that emerged. You weren't just stuck on this track that one thing had to proceed after the other quickly, but you were willing, when you were in Japan, to take an opportunity when it came up. And so, um, I that's interesting to me. And you were open to things that maybe weren't planned from the beginning, but that kind of emerged. And do you feel that kind of spirit is something that, I don't know, that you've always lived with? Is that something that you observed in your family? Is that unique to you? That willingness to try new things and go outside of your comfort zone and be open to what may come your way.
You know what, Jacob? That is so me to a T. That is definitely me. I have always been, I don't know, I don't know how to describe it, but I do whatever I want when I want. And I think life, well, at least life for me is all about gathering new experiences. And I almost want to live life like I have 100 lives in my lifetime. So a part of that is just accepting things and going with the flow and trying new things. And my mother is actually a lot like that. She's a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a down to earth hippie, but very humble and smart at the same time. She's really, really amazing. And my father, I don't know, he's a unique one as well. Maybe less so. Definitely my mum is more like that. But yeah, I can't imagine life living any other way. So yeah.
So
Yeah, that's interesting you picked that up.
so it's interesting. I just want to ask, this part of yourself
Hmm.
that is uh, creative and it likes to explore things and have experiences, is also connected at the same time to a part of yourself, I'm sure, that has to be very precise and descriptive. Like when you're working in pharmacy, as like the
Yes.
scientific type of speaking and analyzing. How do you switch your mental gears, so to speak, when you're going from, a mode where you're analyzing things and describing things to a kind of a, I don't know, um, more free experiential, free spirited mindset? Is it easy for you to go back and forth? Do the two parts of yourself meet? Is that part of yourself expressed in the context of being a pharmacist or a scientist at times? I'm kind of curious.
That's Jacob, that's really, really interesting as well. And I sometimes think about like this with me. I am a little bit different in that I do have a creative side, like my father in particular. Like I love fashion, I love art, which I mean, not saying pharmacists don't, but I have a very keen interest in these things, which is a little bit unique for, I suppose, pharmacists. And I don't know if I'd say I have to switch between the two, being very analytical and accurate, and the more kind of, I don't know, free side. They sort of just coexist. It's sort of just me. I'm sort of this mishmash or blend of the two. And I guess it is a bit unique. I am a bit of an oddball. I always have been. And that's the way I am. But I think you don't have to be this full, serious, analytical, scientific person to excel in the sciences or healthcare. Absolutely not. I think anyone can find their place, even if you do feel a bit left out or whatever. As long as you study hard and know what you have to do and do your job properly, I think, yeah, it's all good.
I'm kind of wondering too, and sorry, Barney, I'm asking so many questions in succession here. I want to give you, do you want to jump in?
No, please. Yeah.
Okay. My last one in this trajectory is for the people that you serve. Sometimes, when a person goes to see a doctor or medical professional, they can feel like the experience can feel impersonal, or like
sure.
the other person who's serving them is disconnected from them. And I'm kind of wondering if, just because of your life experiences, and ways of relating to people and building relationships and connecting with people, if that will help you make your patient feel like, you see other parts of them. They're not just a specimen to observe, like they're a human. I mean, I'm not saying that doctors or pharmacists would convey that emotion, but sometimes people feel that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And they do, especially in Japan. Can I say that?
Yeah. And so hopefully that part of yourself that is very relational and experiential, like helps bridge that and express empathy. I would imagine that would come naturally. But
I don't mean to toot my own horn here, but I think, but yes, I think that's where maybe I do excel, is connecting with patients. I've always noticed that it comes quite easily for me, and I'm just not a judgmental person myself, and I do think I have quite a lot of empathy. So yeah, that's just apparent, I guess, with my patients. Maybe that's why they come for me in particular or ask for me, and it's really, really rewarding. And I really want that again, because I haven't worked in pharmacy for a few years now. So I'm really looking forward to that nice feeling, connecting with patients again. Yeah, that's an interesting point, Jacob.
Yeah, I was going to mention, maybe to put in that for so many times my interaction with you was just talking about classes, or trying to figure out how to do something together on PowerPoint or something like that.
True,
and then you showed me this fantastic self-study unit that you put together for the students about different ways that drugs interact, or different, studying about some drug and reporting on that.
Yes.
And I heard you talk about, your plan for that and what they should be able to do, and giving all these examples. And I thought, this is this whole other side of Katrina that I didn't ever get to see, because we are always just interacting with each
really?
other.
Like through such a limited space.
Exactly. And basically just as friends, or colleagues, as teachers. And maybe it was, just your fantastic bubbly personality. Maybe it was just easy for me to forget, oh, wait a minute, she's also this super professional person here, who really knows what she's talking about, for sure. And and I think about all the experiences that you have picked up on this kind of unintended extended journey here in Japan.
Yeah,
Um,
True.
what is it though of all? Maybe I have two-part question here. One is what is it that you miss? I mean, you kind of already answered this a little bit, but what is it that you miss about being a pharmacist that maybe you're looking forward to getting back to? And what do you think are some things that you've learned here in Japan, maybe through your studies or just through meeting the Japanese people, that you think you can apply to um, being kind of pharmacist 2.0, when you get back to being a pharmacist again?
Right. Well, I might go with the last question because it's fresh in my mind and something popped up. Yeah, like teaching at IUHW at the medical school, that was completely new for me because I'd never taught before in my life. So I was thrown into that completely new environment. And at first it was quite, a bit nerve-wracking, but it was so rewarding. And I think I learned a lot from teaching. And I honestly think that will make me a better pharmacist going back home in the future. Um, Now, I don't know why exactly, but can't you see it too, Barney? Like, I think the teaching experience would help going back and just being with patients. And yeah, I don't know. Sorry, it's so late at night, so not the best answer to the question, but and the first question you asked me was what am I looking forward to working as a pharmacist again? Oh goodness me. Well, I didn't work registered using my real that's not a good way to put it. I worked as an intern pharmacist, so under the supervision of an experienced pharmacist, right? So I actually haven't worked using my real license at all. So I am just excited to start work practicing for real. Obviously, I will need to get supervised, but I want to develop my pharmacist skills a lot. I want to work in different areas, compounding, hospital, maybe drug and alcohol services, getting to talk with patients again, just honing in on my clinical skills. That's what I really want after so long of being away from the field.
Yeah, when we were getting ready for the podcast to start today, we were just talking a little bit about your experiences in the US and in Australia and in Japan. And I got the sense from that part of our conversation that there are some maybe public health aspects to pharmacy work that really need to happen that sometimes people aren't aware of. They're not aware enough of the medications that they're taking or the things that they should be doing. And I'm kind of wondering, are there some public health aspects of pharmacy that you've become aware of that you're passionate about, that, like you mentioned just now, maybe, I think you said treating alcohol or other, there are ways you can support. Are there some public health things that you particularly feel are near and dear to your heart that you would like to address specifically, or that you've recognized are problems, whether it be in Japan or in the US or Australia? Maybe there are different ones in the different locations. I'm not sure.
True. Well, speaking of Japan, before speaking about Japan, I'm quite interested in contraceptive use is one of my areas of interest. Another one would be mental health. What would another one be? Probably those two would be the ones I'm quite keen on. And interestingly, in Japan, those areas are really lacking. I can see Barney sort of nodding, nodding his head in agreement. So yeah, I mean, it's a shame. It's like, I'm a licensed pharmacist. I'm here living in Japan. I want to contribute to, improve people's health and improve health outcomes, but I feel so lost because I don't understand the language well. I did have my rewarding time at the medical school, which I'm grateful for. But I hope that in Japan, the stigma associated with these two areas will be broken down more over the years. I mean, it slowly is, but it's far behind the West, don't you think, Barney, with those
Yes.
two areas in
Mhm.
particular? Yeah, I know. And well, America and Australia are quite similar, so there's a lot less stigma these days. So I'd like to get more experience in those two areas and be able to contribute to improving people's health in general. But yeah, I want to learn more about those two areas for sure.
I know Barney has shared with me before his, maybe you would want to say more, Barney, I don't know, but just about other instances he's talked with people about mental health services or the need, people wanting to seek it out, but sometimes, like you said, there can be a stigma associated with getting, counseling or therapies. And so sometimes people will even travel to other countries or seek other opportunities. But I feel like even here in the United States, and maybe this is another connector I'll bring in just as somebody working in a different area and in the area of ministry in a church, sometimes even doing education with mental health here can be challenging and economically with a lot of local funding here in our city, mental health programs have been cut back. And we see in our community greater need for, people to come alongside and help those who are struggling with mental health problems. And
Yeah, I think the same. Definitely on the Gold Coast, mental health programs have been cut back, which is a real shame.
yes,
Yeah, people are getting like hospitalized and they're not really getting the full care they need, and then they're getting kicked out essentially, going back, and they're not really being truly helped. It's a bit of a broken system. And look, I'll be honest, I don't know much about it. I haven't worked much as a pharmacist, and I do really want to learn more about all these issues. So it seems kind of similar to what you're saying is happening. Yeah, I no doubt, probably in many countries, hey, which is
yes,
really sad.
for
They
sure,
should be cutting back.
for
They should
sure.
be adding and improving. Oh,
I know, like my wife is a microbiologist, and she's worked in academia for a while, and more recently in industry. But she's transitioning now to the field of being a counselor, and I think it's interesting, like to think about. And I think that's partly because she's seen a need for mental health in our community, and we've learned even in our own family, like working with our kids when they've had anxiety about things, how it's so transformative and powerful to have tools to give to people. But I think it's interesting
right.
for somebody who, like she has a background in science and can understand certain aspects of the physiological dimensions of mental health, and but then to realize that there's a whole other set of tools that are available. And so it's kind of fascinating. You said earlier,
Right.
as a pharmacist, you kind of wear some of those hats. You can in certain cases. And so,
Yes.
yeah, and that's fascinating to
Yes.
me.
Yes.
So hope,
Absolutely. Like we can talk to people and refer them on to the appropriate other healthcare professionals. And yeah, as a pharmacist, I feel you do wear many hats. And yeah, it's sort of like you've got the hard skills, or like, the science is down pat, but you also need to have very good communication skills um, to be a pharmacist as well. So it's a bit of a really interesting job like that. Yeah.
Barney, are there any other questions that you would like to ask before we would draw our time to a close?
I
And for that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
mhm. No, I was just going to say that I don't really have any other questions, but just wanted to say again how it's been so great to have Katrina here, and the chance to see the things that she's passionate about. And I think that we can see how, as she mentioned, these two different aspects, and as Jacob, you mentioned earlier too, of the person that she is and how they really just gel together so well, to being someone who's just so well suited as a teacher, as I've known her, and then using that to be a pharmacist, I think, as well. And wherever she ends up, wherever you end up, your community will be so much more blessed for being able to have you there. And
Wow,
thank you for coming here today and sharing with us.
Thank you very much for such kind words. And thank you to you both. I really enjoyed being on your podcast. And thank you very, very much.
It's our pleasure, and we want to thank our listeners for joining us today. We hope that you've learned something new about pharmacy, and also perhaps too about how who we are as people can inform the careers that we have and can be a help and actually an asset as we pursue that. And so we want to thank you for being with us, and until next time, goodbye.